Hey there, thanks for tuning in. Tonight, due to technical difficulties, we're going to replay a great interview we had with Kevin Hale. If you heard this episode back in December, you are ahead of the curve. But if you haven't, you should check it out. He's got an awesome book, and we dive deep into that right now.
He's alive! Have you checked the children? Get out!
You have scoured the podcast world and finally found us, Newsworthy with Steve and Jerry, where we delve into all things mysterious, macabre, or out of this world, and decide if they are truly newsworthy. 2 words and 2 question marks.
Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back to Newsworthy.
Hello.
He seems
How y'all doing?
I'm good. We have with us again tonight Mr. Kevin Hall. We are excited to have him back. We had him on back before Christmas to talk about his book. We discovered that we have great kinship and didn't talk nearly as much about the book as we wanted to, so we wanted to invite Kevin back. Brett, you're here. Welcome back.
I'm here. Yeah.
You, sir. We can see your face. It's
you
impressive.
can see my face now. Yeah. Kevin, I don't know if you've seen any of our other shows on YouTube or anything, but I had a beard that was like this long last week, and my wife, she was like, "Hey, you need to trim that," and I was like, "Okay." So she started cutting. I was like, "Surely she can't mess it up." She said she was just gonna take an inch off. And I look in the mirror, and she like cut the front super short, but then the back of the beard was super long. She was like, "It makes it look fuller." I was like, "No, it looks like complete crap." So I started trying to trim it, and she had cut the front so short. I was like, "All right, I'm just taking it off." I tried to rock the mustache. I did that for about 30 minutes, and then my wife made me shave it. So here I am.
Yeah. My wife
That
does not like
story reminds me when I was in college, one of my roommate's girlfriends convinced me to let her cut my hair one time. Lisa informed me that she had cut hair many times before. It was only afterwards that she informed me that consisted of cutting her dog's hair a few times. So, yeah.
That's crazy.
Similar results.
No,
We
I
are
can
all
remember
virtual
one time
today.
I grew out the Santa beard and had it out like this, and the family was saying, "You got to cut that off." Well, it was my granddaughter's birthday, and this was in May, so it was a few months after Christmas. And so I said, "Guess what? We're going to cut the beard off today, and you're going to take the first cut." So I just let all the grandkids
man,
take the
that's-
scissors and start cutting, and then I
You're
just
brave.
all up afterwards.
I
But
bet
they
they
had a
will.
lot of fun. They had a lot
I
of
bet
fun.
so.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, we're all virtual today because, and I'm blaming this squarely on the person who is that is most worthy of the blame.
It's my fault.
And no, Jerry, for once it's not your fault. Kevin has allowed his snow and ice and cold to get out of the yard and come over in our yard. We want you to take that stuff back, please.
Well, I wanted everybody to enjoy the fun. I mean, I had I think it was 6 or 7 inches when we talked last time, and took the snowblower out, and I probably maybe have 2, 3 inches out there. But the fun thing is, if you travel about an hour east of here, you're running into not 2 or 3 inches, but you're running into 2 or 3 feet.
Isn't that crazy? Lake effect snow?
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's
I
crazy.
mean, it's just phenomenal when you go up north, the Adirondacks, Tug Hill Plateau, and they're talking, 6 to 9 feet of snow on the ground, and I'm saying, whoa. I haven't seen that since I was a kid, and we used to get those kinds of snows. But
Can't even imagine.
Yeah.
that's a lot.
I wouldn't want to live any farther north than Kentucky. I don't. I wouldn't want it. We went to Columbus, Ohio one time in the middle of winter, and it was right in the middle of a snowstorm, and they got like 3 feet. And honestly, they took care of the roads really well. Like the next day, you couldn't even hardly tell on the roads; it was perfectly clear. But man, that was awful. Just driving up there, I was like, all right, I'm good. Kentucky's for me.
Well, I got 2 snow stories that I'll share real quick. So the first one is I used to live in Salmon, Idaho, which I love Salmon, Idaho. Beautiful town. If you've never been, please go. They need the dollars. It used to be a gold mining community. Gold mines closed, so everybody's just trying to survive. But the thing about Salmon, Idaho is it's in the mountains, but it is also within 3 mountain ranges. So they would talk about, well, we're going to get 4 or 5 feet of snow, but we would get 2 or 3 inches of snow in Salmon. 6 was the most I ever got. And the mountains would just soak it up. You would see, they would just get mounds. They had these big snow things, the plows that they used were amazing. I just can't even describe them. And then I lived in Colorado, which I lived 100 miles east of Denver in this little town called Fort Morgan. And I was up at 11 o'clock, watched the weather. They said, we're going to get some snow, nonchalant, no big deal. I look outside, there's not a flake on the ground, nowhere. And then I wake up at 5 to go back to work, and I open the door, and there's 3.5 feet. And I'm like, what the? How is this a little bit of snow? So I didn't even wake the kids up. And I was getting ready to leave at 7, and the buses just kept trucking. They didn't even stop the buses. Wasn't even an hour delay, nothing. I was like, oops, I guess you're all not going today. But, yeah, those are my 2 big snow stories. This here is about all I want. I want it to go away, and I want it to be 80 degrees again, to be honest.
Me too. I'm the same way.
I used to like it when I was younger. I don't anymore. It hurt.
Well, I liked it because you got out of school and you could go out and play and all that. But now I still have to go to work.
Right?
I still have to work, so it's not as fun anymore.
Very true.
Thing. That's the thing. So,
I don't know if I told you guys, I went to the doctor yesterday.
Oh, Jerry.
She had some pretty good advice for me. She told me to not eat anything fatty. I said, you mean like bacon, hamburgers? She said, no, fatty, don't eat anything. So, yeah.
That's a pretty good one.
That's what I got from the doctor.
Wow, that was good.
Man.
Very good.
Well, you're starting right into them, but I wrote mine down so I'd make sure I wouldn't forget them here.
There you go.
So I'm going to start with the first one here. My boss called me and said, where the hell have you been? I've been trying to find you all day. I told him that good employees are hard to find.
That's right. Absolutely.
I like that. That's good stuff.
That's awesome.
I like
might
that a
want to
lot.
just stop there. I got a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. You're good. You're golden. Hey, Brett.
Yeah.
My grandson came to me the other day, and he told me to name a country without R in it. I told him, no way. No, nothing.
It's all right. It was okay.
Norway does not appreciate that joke.
What?
Norway does not appreciate that joke.
Yes, they do.
They like that R.
Norway actually just appreciates anybody saying Norway because they get forgotten about so much anyway.
That's what Donald Trump apparently thinks about Denmark.
I actually dated a girl that was from Denmark. She was a foreign exchange. Yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. But so I was wondering, why doesn't anyone wear a belt of watches?
Why is that?
Because it would be a waste of time.
Oh.
That it would. I can agree.
Yeah, I did date a girl from Denmark. Her name was Simone.
You have a story to tell. Tell it before Truly gets back.
Well, I mean, there's not much of a story that I want to tell on air. But anyways, I did date a girl from Denmark. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. I remember several girls you dated. I could tell them on the air, especially if you like listening, but I won't.
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah. I remember a whole summer we spent chasing one of the girls you wanted to date around Kentucky Kingdom. Just saying.
Listen, I don't remember that ever happening. I think you're making that.
Gotcha.
I think you're mixing me up with one of Josh's other friends.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. The only other friend Josh had that we even went with this. No, that was Nick's friend. That was Josiah.
Yeah, I remember I went with you all one time.
Yeah, we had a great time. Oh, so guys, let's get into this book. Kevin, you're an author. You've written several books. You've been on several podcasts. We appreciate you again coming onto our podcast, helping us help you spread the word and helping us continue to have great guests. So last time you were here, we were just starting to talk about some of the real ins and outs of what your book's all about. So tell us a little bit about, catch us up, and let's go from there.
Sure. I'm going to start, though, with something that just happened, but it ties into the book quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's another gentleman who's got a podcast out there. I'm sure some of you have heard of Dan Bongino. Well, Dan's mom just passed away, but it was due to a fall that she took, and she was not a what we would call a much older woman now. I'm approaching 70. I'm just on the doorsteps of it. And so I would imagine she's probably was a few years older because Dan is maybe in his late 40s. Well, his mom took a fall and wound up dying as a result of it. Well, that happened. She took the fall around maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, and Dan got up to go get a drink of water, and all of a sudden it felt like somebody gave him a hug. And he described it the only way he could, that it was a mom hug. And he says, wait a minute, this is weird. This is really weird. And then he looks at his cell phone, and there had been a text message. And the text message came through around 2 something in the morning and said, call me. And it gave the name. And it happened to be another woman in the building. And the woman was trying to reach him to tell him his mom had taken a fall. And she had gone in the ambulance. Unfortunately, she had passed away. And a little after 3 is when Dan felt that hug.
Oh,
Wow.
I mean, these are the types of things that if you're open to it, if you believe, you can actually receive these kind of communications from beyond the veil. And that's really what my book is about. And again, the book is called Signs, the Veil is Thinner Than We Imagine. And it has in it many, many stories of people who have had these experiences. And some are friends of mine, some are named people. Sam Kinison, the comedian, Suzanne Summers, Olivia Newton-John, all have had these kinds of experiences, either them personally or their families, as a result of, in Suzanne's case, it was her husband as a result of Suzanne passing away. And in Olivia Newton-John's case, it was her daughter that had the experience after her mom had passed away. And when I got into researching a lot of these stories, I mean, I went back to the Egyptians, the Romans. I looked at cultures of China, Japan, India, the Norse. I looked at the American Indian. And these stories permeate all of it. They permeate cultures, they permeate countries and time. And when I started to really concentrate on these and hear the stories of these people, you can't help but at least ask the question, what is beyond this life? And it goes to a quote that I've heard, and I've repeated it a few times, and it says, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And when you think about that, I mean, that just broadens your horizon so much. It's like trying to comprehend the universe. I mean, you just can't. It's so vast. But at least lets you know and feel that there's more out there than just our mortal being. And so, what I try to do within the book, and I've also referred to the book at times as being a bit of a primer, to show you different ways we can receive those communications. And in Dan Bongino's case, it was a physical embrace. He actually described that he felt, and he said it felt like a mother's hug. And that's exactly what it was. And other folks describe having such a vivid dream that, I mean, it was so real to them, and they remember it not just hours later, but days and months later. And oftentimes, it's where a person that had passed on comes to them and they can describe the outfits they're wearing. They could even describe it down to the smell of the perfume they might have on. And that's called a visitation dream. And these dreams, again, they went through time. In fact, the Egyptians had not only the Book of the Dead, but they had a Book of Dreams, and that book resides in a British museum today. And they talked about a lot of the symbols that you might receive within your dreams, and this is what those symbols might mean. And if you still had questions about how to interpret, there were oracles that you could go see, and they would help you interpret your dreams. I went to the Romans, and the Romans had a law on their books that said if you have any kind of powerful dream about the empire, you must go to the nearest forum and tell everybody about this dream, because the Romans believed that if you had a dream about the empire, if they could take and glean any knowledge from it that could help sustain that empire, then that's what that dream was about and meant to do. So there's a lot of importance paid to dreams, but these communications also come many, many other ways. Uh, there was a gentleman I interviewed that was in the Twin Towers the day that the planes hit 9/11, and he was leading a group of people out of the area that the plane had actually come through. And as he got into the hallway, he was faced with a series of doors that he could take stairwells going down. Well, his first inclination was to take a door labeled C, and the doors were A, B, C, etc. And so as he started to go towards it, he felt a push on his shoulder directing him towards stairwell A. And so he thought, well, one stairwell is just as good as the other. So he took stairwell A. He managed to get out. And on the way down, he also managed to free another guy that was trapped. Who pushed him? Nobody was around him. And last time I think we chatted about the another gentleman in the building that same day was with this group, and how he decided to leave that party and go up to the 91st floor where he thought the air was better up there, only to find out it was not good up there. Everybody he saw up there was laying down sleeping on the floor. He was overcome with some of the smoke. He started to lay down, and just about drifting off, he hears a voice telling him to get up and get out. And he looked around. Nobody was there. Everybody was out. He got up. He started to head down the stairs. He got down to about I think it was the 69th floor, somewhere in that range. And he looked, and it was all kinds of smoke and everything ahead. He didn't know what to do. And there was that voice again: go through it and get out. He's alive today because he listened to those voices. But as he'll tell you, and I asked him during the interview, what do you think that voice was? Where did it come from? And he gave the answer, and he says it was either God or an angel. Now, God's a very busy person. So a lot of times he sends messengers, and those messengers could be your guardian angel. It could be even something such as a woodland creature. It could be something in a dream state. I don't know if we got into discussing it on the last call. I don't remember. but I often see the same set of numbers showing up
We
over and
did.
over and over again. And those numbers are 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4. But I had another instance, and I'm coming home from guitar lessons one night, and this is about a week before I released the book, and this car, vroom, right in front of me. And I said, whoa, whoa. And I'm slamming the brakes, getting ready to say a few things in my head here and not so much out loud. But I looked down, and on the license plate, now, folks call me Kevin. Very few people call me Kev. But on the license plate was KEV and a set of 4 numbers. And I said, whoa, wait a minute, time out. So I went home and I looked up those 4 numbers. Now, before I tell you what those 4 numbers were, let me tell you, when I started to investigate, seeing these numbers over and over again, something kept popping up whenever I did a search. And that something was called angel numbers. These are numbers that folks see and see often, and messages can be sent to you via those numbers. And 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4 just simply meant keep going, you're on the right path. And when I looked up those set of 4 numbers, it was a similar message, but it also said, don't let things stop you. And so that's a week later, I released the book online.
That's awesome.
So these are different ways we can receive communications. And I don't know if we talked about it last time, but through animals and through other things such as butterflies, as an example, hummingbirds. And I've had instances personally with both of them. I'm sitting on my back deck, and both my wife and we're sharing an adult beverage and just relaxing after the day's chores are done. And all of a sudden, a monarch butterfly flies by. Now, we get a lot of monarch butterflies. Well, this butterfly flew by, and we were watching it go off and away, and all of a sudden, it made a complete circle in the sky, came back, and came over and landed on my shoulder. I said, wait a minute. We've sat on this deck many times. Those butterflies have been around many times. Why did that butterfly choose just then to make the complete circle in the sky and come over and land on my shoulder? Well, butterflies, after I looked it up, are said to be messengers. Even down to when you start to look at the coloration, that could mean things. People often said, oh, if you see a red cardinal after a person dies, someone you knew very well, that's the person's spirit coming back to let you know it's okay. Now, these are obviously interpretations that have been made, but it's interpretations that also span time, cultures, countries. There's so much of this. And I think I described last time too, I'm not one of these religious kind of people who go to church every Sunday and, have mass and say the prayer and all this other kind of stuff and do the rosary. I'm not Catholic, I'm Methodist, but I'm not along those lines. I don't like modern day churches. It doesn't have the same reverence for me that the church I grew up in. So I look at this and I can be skeptical. And I'm also one of these that love to watch the Discovery Channel and watch all the different things out there on, oh, geez, you got Josh Gates and his Discovery. You got William Shatner and his shows. You've got Oak Island. You've got the one out of Utah with the UFOs. And I'm trying to think of the name of that one.
You got this great podcast called Newsworthy.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. But I'm the one who says, are you sure there's nothing there? How do we really know?
Right.
And I will tell you, I've had an experience, and a lot of people have. I don't know what it was, but I'm watching a set of lights in the sky, and they're coming, and it's I'm almost describing as, is it white? Is it blue? Is it red? I can't really make it out. And all of a sudden, as it comes here, it just took off to the left. Whoa, wait a minute. What did I just see? Now, I don't know what I saw. I just know I saw something that's not of a plane type that we have. It wasn't a helicopter. There's no sound. It wasn't a drone. Again, no sound, and those things don't move that fast. I'm not aware of any kind of a military type craft that we would have that would do those kinds of things.
Yeah, we have
So I
that
got to
story.
admit, I'm a
When
little skeptical on that.
we interviewed several people in Logan, Ohio, that all had from different counties, different parts of the state, different parts of many states, that all had a very similar experience as you, where they were outside or they were on their porch and a triangle of lights would come. It would slowly hover, no sound, uh, and then poof, gone. It's like,
Yep.
and when you hear one story like that, that's one story. Oh, yeah, it's easy to dismiss. But when you start talking to multiple people from
Yes.
different areas whom have never met each other, and their stories may be different. I had a bunch to drink, or I was coming out of church, or whatever the case is, when their stories are so vastly different about the extra stuff, but dead center on the item that they saw, the vehicle that they saw, it really makes you think, what is that? What's going
Yeah.
on? Same as what you
Yep.
just said, because I'm pretty smart. I know that planes have wings. I know that blimps are quiet and they're long and but they don't move like that.
No, no.
So, I was going to ask you, as you talk about your book and some of these signs, has today's culture with our cell phones and just how busy people are, is that really like, do you think that's dimmed the things of people reaching out to, like things beyond the veil reaching to the people they're trying to reach? Did that make sense?
It does, but I think the people who have them, they get over preoccupied. And so they don't tend to see what's around them. Now, when I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers. We had a telephone, but it was a party line when I was really young. And I tell the grandkids, I remember when we got our first microwave, or I remember when we got the first color television. Today's kids, they're so caught up in stuff. And again, going back to when I was a child, the big thing for me was playing little league in the summertime. And then you get into high school, and I tried out for the baseball team. Now kids today, they're shuffled here and shuffled there, and they got soccer, and then they go over here for whatever they're going to do next, and they have no time left in the day. And then what do? They collapse in bed at night. I think when you've got some time to think, some time to question what is around you, that's when whatever this part of your mind is opens up, and you can start to see these signs that are around you. And at first you're going to say, wait a minute, that's something else. It's just a coincidence. Well, yeah, but how many coincidences does it take before you start to say, wait a minute, there's something more to this? And
That
that's
makes
where I tell people, that's when you can start to really see these signs that are around you. You go beyond the coincidence stage and say, all right, I'm open to it being something else. Now, show me, going to the state of Missouri, got to prove it to me. Show me that it's real. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, when you can really sit back and start to see these things happen.
It's
Brett.
funny you talked about cell phones. So I have a story. My grandpa, I actually told this on air when I first started doing this show, but my grandfather passed away in 2006. I was pretty young then, but um, it was probably, I don't know, a week or two after he had passed. There was a bunch of things that happened, like the his old car was parked at my uncle's house. The locks would unlock and lock just randomly. Um, and one of my cousins, he had seen like an older guy who looked a lot like my grandfather, and he was like maybe 3 or 4 at the time, and he was telling his parents like, hey, this this guy's coming to see me at night, and he was telling stories, but one of them was the whole family was gathered around just telling stories about my grandfather, and my cousin's phone lights up, and all that is on the screen is just thank you over and over and over again, just in rows, and they still have the picture of it. They still have the picture of the phone, which is pretty cool. But anyways, I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, and in fact, and I believe we talked about this last time, maybe a little bit. We're made up of electrical energy. I mean, we've also got chemical energy, but it's energy nonetheless. So where does all that energy go when our mortal body, when it shuts down? And I believe that's part of what goes with our soul. And it's that electrical energy then that we can take and do things and manipulate things with, as such, the cell phone with the thank yous on it. And it takes a lot, from what I've gathered in just my readings, for a spirit, if you will, to utilize that energy in crossing the veil. So we don't receive these communications all the time, but they are there if you need them. They're there. You can ask for them. Another way you can get the communications. I was on a podcast where the person was saying, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," but they don't talk to you. No, I never said they talk directly to you, but you can receive these informational. If you're into computers at all, think of it as an informational packet, and it comes to you, and it may be this big or it may be this big. Let me get on the camera here. Maybe this big, but you get the information, you get enough of it. Now, let me also go back to that gentleman who was tapped on the shoulder and directing him towards stairwell A. Well, as he and the other gentleman he was helping were going down the stairwell to get out, he met a gentleman named Jose going up the stairs, and they knew each other. And the one guy said, "Jose, come with us. You'll get out. Don't go up." He says, "No." He says, "I've got the walkie-talkie, and I heard people up above. They were asking for help, and I got to go help them." Well, that was the last they saw of Jose. Jose did not make it out. Well, about a week later, Brian Clark was the gentleman. Brian's sleeping, and he's just about waking up, and he describes that he sees Jose standing at the foot of his bed, and Jose is in a almost billowy white shirt, kind of glowing. And he said, "I couldn't see Jose's feet because that's where the footboard was of the bed." But he says, "I asked Jose, I said, 'Jose, you made it out. How did you do it?'" And he said, all Jose did was look at him and smile and nod. And that's when he knew inside that Jose was dead, but he was okay. And he said, "I felt the feeling that all the other people were with Jose and they were okay too."
Kevin, let me ask you a question. We talk about in the book, contextually speaking, what is your definition for the book and for your personal preference of what the veil actually is?
The veil to me is that border between the spirit world and our world. And that veil is also oftentimes referred to as thin places. And that's kind of what the Irish folklore is. And Irish have a lot of folklore around different things. But when they start to talk about these kinds of communications, they refer to it as you're in a thin place. That's where it's so thin that the two worlds are almost merging, and you can receive the information that way.
Nice.
So that's my definition. Think of it as a border, and typically it goes like this. Anything come over, but every once in a while it comes right through, and then it goes to the other side, and you can get that communications.
So
Um,
if someone who has never had an experience, never had a communication, never had seen a ghost or an alien or a Bigfoot, Jerry, uh, if you've been that person, how would you go about opening yourself up so that you can safely, and I do use it because I feel like if good can come through the veil, uh, there has to be the flip side of that. So how could you safely open that veil and be able to receive these messages, these nudgings? I guess is a
And
good
that's
word.
a real good question, because if you've ever watched any of these ghost hunter type shows, they always talk about, there could be those evil, bad spirits, and you need to tell them, go away. I don't want you. You're not welcome here, and that kind of thing. Um, to tell somebody or counsel them, I would probably get into more of a discussion with them and say, what are your beliefs? What do you think actually happens when it's your time to go? And then I would say, what do you think? Do we go into nothing? And I've been on a couple of podcasts where the person has come right out and told me, he says, when I'm dead, I'm dead. There is nothing else. And so then that's when I start to ask them questions. Well, do you go to the gravesite? Why do you go to the gravesite then? Because a lot of folks, they may say they don't believe, but there's always that quizzitive part in the back of their mind saying, but what if I'm wrong? What
You
if
know,
there is this afterwards?
I'll take it a step further. If you're, and I have friends that are that way, that are true atheists. They have, when I'm dead, I'm dead. I become fertilizer. But then I look a little bit further into their life, and their life is filled with emptiness. And those people really break my heart because I don't have the intelligence and the position to speak with them about the things that they need so much. And I firmly believe that in the Bible, and forgive me for not knowing the verse. I'm sure Jerry knows exactly what I'm going to say because Jerry's brilliant with this stuff. But um, there's a very definitive warning not to become a stumbling block for people. So I'm always, my fear is with those people in particular to have that conversation and be just literate enough to push them away even further. If that makes any sense.
It does, and I'm always careful on that myself. I would rather direct them to sources because, uh, I could not give you a quote from, from John or from any of the others inside the Bible with any kind of accuracy.
Right.
But it I don't know how you reach some people, but it's a matter of what are you doing? Are you just living your life one day at a time and going around like a horse with blinders on, or do you think that there's something that much bigger and broader? I was listening to a thing online the other day, and the person was talking about um, Darwinism versus God and creation, and they were stating that they thought it was you had to have much more faith to believe in Darwinism than you do in the Bible. Because in Darwinism, you've got to believe that we all came from, this little slime that somehow got all these amino acids and everything at the right time and created the animals, which then all of a sudden migrated and became land dwelling animals, and then all of a sudden grew up and became us. It takes a lot of faith to believe in this when you don't have all of uh, the skeletons, if you will, to show all that progression and migration than it does to believe in a great designer. And when you look at what it takes to put the human body together, everything from the eyes to even the circulatory system, the digestive system, and how we can take and consume things, and it turns into food and energy, and all of that. You got to say, time out here. This didn't just happen out of some slime in a pond somewhere that a few amino acids and over 1,000,000 years we turn into us. I can't believe in that.
I
It
believe
doesn't
that
make
there's
a
a little
lot of
bit of
sense.
truth in it. I mean, if you look at some animals and creatures, we evolve. Evolution does happen. But it's micro. It's not macro. You
Right.
know, a fly in a particular part of Arizona is going to adjust to live in that particular part of Arizona. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
to
But I think
It's
that's another example of just something that's miraculous that happens.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I, there was a book I read. It's called The Brothers Karamazov. It's a Russian novel back from like the late 1800s. But it was Dostoevsky is the author. But he had a character in there. His name was Ivan, and he was an atheist. And he made the argument that if there is no God, then everything is permissible because there's no real reason, there's no morality. Because we get most of the morality that we cling to is from the Bible, at least in
yes.
our Western culture. So I just thought that was really interesting of an argument to think of, like, well, for atheists to think about is like, well, if there is nothing after this, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Why do you need to be nice to this person, or why wouldn't you just? I think it's a slippery slope.
It is, and that goes to the other thing that I was just reading about the other day, and that is that most governments, one of the things they have the hardest time destroying is Christianity. Because as Christians, we believe in the higher power, not the political power, not the government power, the higher power. And so they need to destroy Christianity in order to really control the people. And that's something that they've tried for thousands of years. You all know it. And they have not succeeded yet.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know at our church we recently celebrated some of China's, and obviously we didn't mention names in the sermon because, believe it or not, they are actively searching for these people. But house preachers that have literally taken a Bible, they've handwritten it, separated it, and given it to other house preachers to do the same thing. And they would take chapters, and they would just it's an amazing it it really blows you away to the level that governments will go to protect themselves from the Bible. And,
Yes.
and I know that this isn't necessarily a religious episode, but you can't, in my mind, there's no separation between the talking about the spiritual battle between good and evil. That doesn't exist if Christianity or religion take it. Islam has that. Buddhism has that. Whatever, take your pick of whatever religion. We're speaking about Christianity because that's what we understand and we know.
Hmm.
But every single religion has a battle, a spiritual battle between good and evil. So you can't really talk about one without delving at least a little bit into the other. So
Yeah.
if this is your first time listening to the show, we're not this isn't something we always talk about, but in this particular topic, it is imperative. And I think even when we talk about ghost and paranormal stuff, it's imperative. You can't
Yes.
have that if this part doesn't exist. If we just die and are dead, then all of that is fake and brouhaha.
Right. Right. Exactly. And one of the things, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Steve, one of the things I try hard within the book is not to be religious and not to go down a strict religious path. So that's why I've gone and looked at cultures and countries and through time to show that this is not something brand new. This has existed. And for it to exist, something has to be controlling it. Something has to be, I'll just say it my way, in charge.
Right.
And for me, when you actually ask the question, what is that? That's where it gets personal. And that's where everybody's got to look inside and say, what really are my beliefs? If you believe this stuff happens, then you got to question and ask, why and what is my faith around it?
And I'll
And
take
now
it
it gets
one.
personal, and a lot of people may not want to look at that.
I will take it one step further, even Kevin. On this show, we talk a lot about aliens and
Hmm.
things that may exist outside the scope of what, um,
Modern science would say is,
right.
you
We
know,
talk about cryptids and Bigfoot
Yep.
and
Yep.
and things of that nature. And then it never fails. I'll get that one conversation with one and I'm not going to pick on uh, denomination or another, but I'll get that conversation and I'll have that conversation. Well, if you believe in aliens, you can't be Christian. Um, and my argument to them always is, even if the Bible is the end all to be all, it is only God's interpretation and story about, to, and for us.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that there's something else not that doesn't mean that there's not something else out there that he's created 400 million light years away that he wants to try that over there too.
That's right.
It,
I mean, they talk about the Great Flood. That happened here.
yeah,
It didn't happen on planet X three
right.
gazillion miles away. Something else might have happened out there. And one of the things I think I commented on your show, where you were talking about Bigfoot, is a lot of folks say, well, where's the clear pictures of it? Or how come it's always the thing running away? And I commented back and said, well, wait a minute. If you saw something that's entirely out of the normal, and you were standing there, what the heck am I seeing? Is your first thought to grab the camera?
No.
No. And in fact, just the other day, and this brought the message home to me even that much clearer, we had a couple fox running through the yard. My dog's going crazy, and the fox were just running around, and they ran around the house and came back around and ran through the yard again. Did I reach for the camera and grab it? No, I was watching the fox.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Enjoy the
didn't
moment.
think about that. So a lot of people, when they finally do realize, oh, geez, I got to get a picture of this, that's when the thing takes off and goes away.
Jerry has good experience with that. He'll often be walking somewhere and somebody will be in awe of how good he looks. And when they finally decide, oh, I need to take a picture because he's so pretty, that's when he usually runs away and they get grainy pictures of Jerry running away.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Kevin, I have a comment. Earlier, you mentioned about that you went to great lengths to try to make sure that you uh, weren't religion specific. You also did the opposite. There's a quote from the book that I loved that said, I am in no way describing, insinuating, or offering any form of the occult or anything of a demonic or dark nature. I love that. That leads me to my question. How do you reconcile faith and reason within your own life and your own work to people who would question your beliefs?
That is a real interesting question. And my first thought is that I have to remember that they have their own beliefs too. And so I usually wind up saying, well, that's fine if that's your belief, but I'm also able to have my belief.
Absolutely.
And we have to agree to allow each other to have that. And I'm willing to sit and listen to you. All I ask is that same respect. Sit and listen to me. You don't have to agree with it, but give me the same respect that I'm going to give to you. And that goes back to the old golden rule, which again goes right back to the Bible.
Sure.
Do unto others as you have them do unto you. And to me, that's kind of how I was raised and believed right from the get-go. And so many things along today's anti-cultural or anti-political, however you want to say it, the non-PC labels we put on it, I do find myself sitting back saying, hey, I don't necessarily believe in this, for my own reasons, I can't tell you how to believe. All I can do is, as a Christian, is pray for your soul.
I can tell you,
Good answer.
Kevin, that as someone who promotes and throws this podcast out to every place that I can possibly think to throw it out to, the number one comment that I receive about our podcast, regardless of topic, because Jerry is very much a skeptic on most things. Uh, he's reasonable, but he's skeptical, and that's okay. We disagree a lot, and that's okay. And
Mhm.
that's the number one comment that I get is how well Brett and I and Jerry get along and
With different beliefs.
completely disagree on most everything. And how we can show that there's a civil, hey, it's okay to disagree and be respectful and not hate each other. You know,
Mhm.
we've lost that in our world. Now, before we go, I know Brett had a few questions about some of the former people you've interviewed. That I have a feeling he's chomping at the bit to just ask you about your past interviews. So I want to give Brett just a second, if you
Sure.
don't care, to ask about some of those because you've interviewed some really high profile, some really awesome people for your books and for your personal stuff. So we'd really like to hear about that as well.
Okay.
Are you talking about the micro?
Yeah, I mean, you were talking before Kevin got on. You had a couple
Well,
of
he actually touched on a lot of it. Like I was
yeah,
really interested in the guy who survived the twin, or the couple of people who survived the Twin Towers. I thought that was
Right.
super interesting, and
yeah. It was a shame that you missed our last episode with
I know
Kevin because he went into detail. Those were really amazing, and he came on right after, like 2 weeks after we had done the 9/11 episode about the conspiracy theories, and cleared a lot of that up.
yeah,
It was, for people who believe that that didn't happen or that certain things were happening inside the building that actually didn't happen. He set my mind at ease just by the stories he told from the people that were actually in there.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, tell us about Mike Rowe. What kind of guy is Mike? He seems like a great dude. Like I'd love to have a glass of wine or a beer with him.
He is, but I will tell you, I didn't interview Mike Rowe. I interviewed a guy that was on Mike Rowe's podcast by the
Oh,
name of
Okay.
Ed
good.
Curry. I've been wanting to interview Mike Rowe. I have been in touch with his mom and dad. Now, I'm also very cautious. I will not say something about a person unless I have their permission. I even a lot of stories that were told to me when I went back to the people and say, "All right, do I have your permission to put this in the book? I won't put word one unless you give me your permission."
Amen.
And some of them said, "Absolutely, put it in," and others said, "Well, now that you've written it up and I've reread my words and I agree with them, I just don't feel I want to put it out there." So I will not do that.
Good.
But I can tell you that my books are sitting on Peggy Rowe's nightstand in queue to be read. And she
Nice.
sends me pictures every once in a while. You're this far into the queue. So I know
That's
she's
funny.
going to be reading those books.
That's
And
amazing.
I'm hoping she'll mention it on to Mike. I would love to get onto Mike Rowe's podcast.
I think he's such a cool dude. As far
Oh,
as he's
absolutely.
so the way he thinks, I think is so, and the way he looks at the world, it's just such
It's
a
very 19, like Micro, and this is going to sound weird because he's nowhere near the age that my grandfather was, but he carries the same values that my grandfather had.
Yes.
yeah,
Work
Yes.
hard, do something, whatever you do. If you're waiting
Yep.
tables, be the best table waiter you can be. If
Yep.
you're a garbage man, do the best job you can because you're important. You mean something. Doesn't matter what your position. We need you to do your best. And the values that he portrays on TV and on the radio and on podcasts that I've heard him on, all the same. Just do your absolute best. This is not an ego game. This is a you do what you were put here to do and you do it to the best of your ability and you'll be fine.
Absolutely, and you know about his foundation to help a lot of the tradespeople and that kind of thing. And he has what he calls the sweat pledge. And if you're going to receive any of his scholarships, you're going to agree to that sweat pledge. And I mean, he's given out millions and millions of dollars, and the testimonials that have come back from these folks, 2, 3, 4 years later, and a lot of these folks are in the high 80s, 90, even to the six figures, 120, $150,000 a year. I mean, that's a pretty darn good salary and working in the trades. Now, there's a couple of charities, and I'm open about this, that my wife and I give to, and the Mike Rowe Foundation is one of them, and Tunnel to Towers is another one. And that came out of the destruction of the Twin Towers on 9/11, and they help out a lot of veterans with disabilities, fallen members, both in a war as well as could be a fireman, could be a policeman, and they've gone in and paid off mortgages for the widower, the widow, and the children, and that kind of thing. And I really truly believe in those charities, but I don't let that cloud my judgment.
Right.
These are just things I do, and I'm able to take and bucket things to say, all right, this is my charity, but this is what I do and write my books. It's that clear cut for me. And I think that just comes from my own background. I was a computer programmer, got into project management and that kind of thing. And you had to really kind of bucket things during that. The only time I didn't really like a lot of my career was when I was a supervisor. I liked it probably for the first minute or so and hated it for the next 2.5 years.
That's what Jerry did his whole career.
Uh, Everybody else's problem is your problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
By the way,
one of Jerry's
earlier
problems.
you mentioned Ed Curry. For
yes,
those who have not read your book, the Brian Clark story, which we went into, he was the gentleman in the tower. But the Brian Clark and the Ed Curry stories, I thought were the best stories in your book to me. So we don't have time to go into it, but if you would like to hear more about it, again, the book, Signs, The Veil is Thinner Than We Imagined. That story alone is reason to buy the book. I love the Ed Curry. He was the addict. I will give that teaser. It was a great story.
And you can find your book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's everywhere, right? I
It
found
is.
it on
it really
Amazon.
is.
That's where I
It's
found it.
all over the place. I mean, I was even just fooling around one day and was on Walmart.com looking for a few things. So let me just see. And I typed my book name. Sure enough, my book is out there on
That's
Walmart.com.
awesome.
So
Awesome.
it's all over the place. And what I tell folks is, yeah, I may make a couple of dollars out of it. That's not the point for me. Go to your local libraries. They can get the book. Ask them to get it and bring it in, and go there. Have them spend a couple of dollars. They'll get it a lot cheaper, and you'll get it, and read it. So again, I'd rather get the message out. That's the whole point for me. Let the folks read my words. If they love it, great. If they don't, okay, that's fine too. So
Well, I personally have had some of those instances with my grandfather, and for whatever reason, Old Spice is his way of communicating to me. That's what I know, that represents him to me. And
yep.
I could be completely alone, kind of thinking about things, toiling on things in my mind, and I'll lock onto something, and if I feel or if I start smelling the Old Spice, I know that's probably the way I need to go. You know, um, Kevin, we certainly appreciate having you back.
Yeah,
You got any more
absolutely.
books in the works?
I do. The next one is more along the lines of historical fiction, and I'll give you just a little tip on it. It is what I describe as science fiction meets world history meets puzzles.
Ooh, I
Very
love
nice.
Nice.
puzzles.
So
Well, when you get it done, Kevin, please reach out to us. We'd love to have you back on the show. Even
Yeah,
though
for
that's
sure.
not our genre per se, we love having you as a guest. We may even try to pick your brain to bring you in on some other things. I know when I do the encounters on the Monday episodes, a lot of those episodes are exactly what you're talking about. Um, the people have had these signs, and maybe we can collab and bring you in on some of those and say, hey, you know what you just had? It wasn't a ghost. It was this, or, you know.
Sign.
I would love it. As one of the gentlemen that I interviewed said, if the book could just help convince one person
Mm-hmm.
and get them to believe, then the book has done its job. And to me, that would be the greatest compliment ever if I could, have somebody say, I was lost, I read your book, but now I know the path and I know what I got to do.
Well, personally, Kevin, I don't think when we all are meeting up in the big sky, you're going to have not one, but you'll probably have hundreds or if not thousands of people coming to you saying, "Hey, your book got me here, and I appreciate that."
No, no, I would love for that. And as Tommy Chung said on that '70s show, that he can't wait to go to heaven because he hears they have an open bar.
Yep.
Kevin, thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure, guys. I really love it. And again, one of these days, I hope to be down your way, and we're going to have a nice Kentucky or Tennessee bourbon and just cheer.
Hey,
Sounds
man,
good.
I'll drink bourbon for that.
Absolutely.
I don't know why I would do that, but I will do that. I would look like Brett or something. That might be bad. And Jerry, if you can't see the light,
Be the light.